Hi, welcome to the Creative Bulb Podcast. My name is Masha Tisa, and today's episode is a recording I did with a friend of mine. Today we're doing what is called a creative chat, where we have different creatives come in and they're able to give different insights concerning matters creativity. Today's guest is called Joy Njeri. She is a sociologist. She's also worked in different spaces in terms of media. She's worked with creatives. And so in a way, she kind of understands the minds of a creative. And today we were having a discussion concerning matters purpose. Joy Njeri has been very instrumental to me, especially in the year 2020, because we've had more calls with her more than any other person, because 2020 was just that season where we were trying to kind of find ourselves. We were trying to know what are we about. We were trying to realign ourselves, and she did a very interesting project together with her brother. It was called the Purpose Project, and this is a project she's also going to talk about in the interview. So I know you guys are going to enjoy this interview. I hope you'll be able to find insights on how you can be able to be in touch with themselves. I think for me, when I listen to people, sometimes the people you listen to and you find everything in their life is just kind of in a way aligned. They have purpose. Everything they do is just around purpose. And I think for me, that's my goal, and my goal for anybody who just is around me. And so Joy is very instrumental, and she gave very good insights on certain things you can be able to do to be able to align to a purpose. So without much further ado, welcome to the podcast, Joy Njeri.
So my name is, as you've heard, Joy Njeri here. I am a student of sociology. I studied sociology, done work around NGO, marketing, anything human behavior, human communication, messaging. I'll do it effortlessly with my eyes closed. So that's an area I'm really interested in. So currently, during this time, got the opportunity to just do a few things in psychology, which I'd been hoping to do. So that's what I do. I am a deeply passionate human being who loves learning. I believe I am a creative thinker. If something interests me, it doesn't matter what it is, I will always find myself in a space where I can learn in the shortest time and just be able to start working on it. So that's me. That's what I love. One of the things I really pray and hope that I can achieve with my life is that I can be able to impact people to get back to being their authentic selves. So even as I do everything, that is always my prayer and my goal, that I'll help each and every individual who comes around me to be able to rediscover themselves. Because when you're your authentic self, you're able to actually be the best person. And that's the person we need right now.
I really love your introduction and everything else. First of all, you've mentioned who you are, and then there's what you do. You've mentioned your values. And I think it's really impressive, because a lot of the time as creatives, when you're describing ourselves, it's really hard sometimes to pen a name to what exactly you're doing. Would you talk briefly about the difference between who you are and what you do? How do you draw the distinction?
It's very interesting, because one of the projects we decided to get into this year, me and my brother, was something called the Purpose Project. Because one of the things we discovered is that very many people define themselves with what they have, what they do. So I live in this place, it almost defines you. And then people forget who they are is not determined by what you do. Because I could be a sociologist, but that's not Joy. That's just something that has been added onto Joy, because I wasn't born a sociologist. I was born with certain values. I was born with certain interests, with certain talents. So the difference between what we do is defined by the career you've taken. Let's say you've decided to follow your talents, and so you're an artist, you draw. That is not you, that's just what you do. The person that you are is defined by the values that you live by, the values, the core principles of what guides you every day. For instance, my mom always said I used to be that child who would take care of everyone else. So I always care about people, naturally. Even when we work it together, one of the things you'll notice, I keep on calling everyone and asking them, how are you doing? How are you doing? That's who I am. Those are the things that a core of what joy is. Whether I went to school or I didn't go to school, these things would still be a part of me. So then who you are those different values. I mean, it's easiest to say in terms of values. You are, for instance, you are caring, you are passionate, you are, determined, you are, all these things are things that define who you are. Then the values go back to the loyal, the honest. What are the principles that guide you? For instance, one of my biggest values that I've actually learned that I really care about is empathy. I love empathy. Like, I care about empathy so much. It guides my relationships. It guides everything that I am. It guides even my job. Because when you're doing anything related to human behavior projects, you must be able to place yourself in other people's shoes. Not be sympathetic, be empathetic. See in the eyes of the other person. So that has been something that I've been learning through this season. So in the Purpose Project, we actually discovered most people, not just creatives, majority of the people define themselves with their jobs, define themselves with what they studied. And then you discover that when these things are not there, then the person feels like they're not worth. Your worth is intrinsic of anything else. You are created by God, worthy, whether you went to school or not. You'd probably be still the same person you are meant to be and do the things that he's meant for you to do. Because then you might not do it through a job, but you might maybe do it through volunteer. So that's the thing, basically. So that's the difference between what you do is what you probably studied, what you're currently doing in an office, what you do for love, for talent, whatever it is. But then the person that you are is defined by the values and the principles that you carry around. That then define how you go, how you walk with people, how you relate with people, how you work. Because if you're someone who cares about integrity, it's one of your values, there is no way you will work in places where there is a lot of corruption. So one of the things that you will notice is that you'll find yourself having a really big problem with such kind of things. So yeah.
How does someone get to discover that? Like you mentioned about the Purpose Project. Is there anything you give people so that people can be able to feel it and then they're like, okay, now I think this is the difference. I think in a way, subconsciously, I also have an idea of who I am. It's only that I'm not really aware. How do you help people now get to a level of awareness?
I think the interesting thing is when me and my brother started Purpose Project, it was just to create a space where we could have conversation. So it wasn't a thing. It was like, we are bored. We've just discovered something interesting. So let's try it out. My bro is more of a critical thinker. So he will analyze stuff. He'll look for models. How do we do stuff? And I'm more of now the people's person. I would be able to have a conversation and also just try analyzing in terms of personalities, in terms of what they're saying. How does this apply to who they are? So it was just like a conversation. I know there are a lot of personality tests out there that many people do, and they're still valuable. But then also the truth is that when it comes to values, what are those things that you consistently feel like they kind of affect you every single day? For instance, I'll say empathy. For me, I find myself in a lot of places where I'm actually in a position to keep on asking, what is that other person going through? What are they feeling? Like, that's the first question when someone tells me something about someone. Instinctively, that's the first thing that goes into it. So it became a value to me when I started realizing that this is something I just don't want it to govern me when I'm working, because empathy is part of the job you do. If you're running a project, you have to understand how these people think, but also it's what are those values I want to input, because values you decide and you choose. I might not choose to be an extrovert or an introvert. Those are kind of somehow imprinted in who I am, but the values I determine and I choose. So that's the difference. Yeah.
You've mentioned a few things about the Purpose Project, but I really want you to just mention briefly, because I know it's your favorite project. Tell us what's the Purpose Project, how it came about, how you're doing it, what are the plans? Yeah.
Interestingly, like I said, one of the things we were trying to do with my brother is write something we were calling a career narrative. And in the career narrative, one of the things people normally do, it's unlike writing a CV, but this is writing a story about yourself using things you really enjoy and things you value. Yeah. So other than saying, I worked in this place for 5 years, what you write in your CV, I did, it's basically being able to tell someone, I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy learning about people. And in this process, this is what I learned. So basically just going to the nitty-gritties of really who you are. And like me, I don't enjoy working in an office. So being able to actually speak that out in your career narrative, that you're more productive when you're out there. So it needed us to go to a place of self-discovery. It needed us to really go and ask ourselves, what do we really enjoy about working? And how do we best work? How are we most productive? Like for me, if you put me in an office, 8 to 5 men, I'm not lying. Half of the time, I wouldn't do anything. If you put me out there, I will do probably 101% because that's what I enjoy. I enjoy interactions. I enjoy being with people. So that's how the Purpose Project came in. So as we were trying to look for a model, as I told you, my brother is one of those guys. He will look for a model for everything. So he tried coming up with a few models. He read a few books just trying to understand how do you get yourself to really know who you really are? Because society has messed us up a lot. When I say messed, has redefined who we really are because of what society needs. So you grow up, you're told, lazima, you must work in an office. So in your mind, you must get an office job. Maybe your likes is drawing, but then you've been forced to work an 8 to 5 job. And so how do we get people out of that? So when us guys were doing it, we were doing it just like for that specific purpose. So what came out of that are the questions that we started asking each other. If you had a value proposition, what would be your value proposition as a person? What would be your brand talking about? So like for me, the most important thing I think I care about the most is I care about the individual. I care about the authentic human being. So we decided to try it out with a few of our friends. In fact, we just decided to just try it out with 10. Our idea was to do a few friends. We started with 10. And we're like, we'll just ask this question and see if we get anywhere with them. If we don't, then we know our model is not working. So we started. I think you were number 4.
I was number 2. For the record, I was the second person, and I passed.
Yeah, you passed. So it was interesting that when we started, we now just try telling people it's a space where we're just having a conversation. Honestly, we had no idea of it becoming really anything. It's just seeing whether it really works. And so when we started, by the time we were getting to the 10th person, everyone was like, can I bring my friend? Can I bring my friend? Can I bring my friend? And we were like, okay, fine, let's try. What's the harm? We're on lockdown. I mean, we have the time. We did that. Ideally, it was just to create a space where people can just have a conversation. So with most people, one of the things we learned is that it's not that people do not know their purpose, what they're called to do. The problem is that there are so many distractions along the line that confuses people whether, am I in the right place? Do I like this? Am I doing this? For instance, you need to pay your rent and you need a job, but you can pick something, for instance, related to what you like, or you can take something and apply what you like. If I was taken to marketing, the first thing by the way, I remember my boss used to tell me, Joy, you're such a hard person. You need to be able to sell. Because the first few months, I really struggled selling. But the thing I really knew well was relationships. And I knew if I create good relationships in the first 3 months, in the next time, I might not even need to go talk to people, because what happens is that people trust you. Trust becomes your selling point. Funnily, by the time I was getting, I think, to the 6 months, I had improved my sales by 70%. And that was just out of relationship. And I learned you apply what you have been given inside, because it can be used in many different areas. Every day we live in purpose. I am a people's person. I love having the opportunity to make people be able to discover who their authentic self is, who they are when they're authentic. Because when they're authentic, whether they're in a company, whether they are just mothers, whether they're just young guys just in that teenage season, what happens is that when someone discovers who they really are and they're not so much affected by everything around society, what happens is that they're able to give 100%, and they're able to give way much more to society back. And for me, that's what I believe in. So yeah, that's how the Purpose Project basically went through.
I just want you to share 5 lessons you've learned with the Purpose Project.
Yeah. So one of the things I discovered, like when we were doing the Purpose Project, I'll start with the misconceptions. We think a certain kind of job or a certain kind of position is purpose. Well, that is not true. Purpose is the person that you were molded, the characters in you that help you perform and impact society. Because a lot of what we have in purpose, it's a gift God gives to you, but it's a blessing to people in society. What you get back is a reward of the impact you have made. I'll give an example of someone like Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was an amazing marketer. He wasn't an engineer as such, but he was an amazing marketer. And he was able to design. He had a way of thinking about design and technology in a way that would kind of bring out the Apple brand. And so what he did is that he gave what he had, the skills he had, because when he built the first iPod, for instance, he would have stopped and said, my purpose is done. But that was not true. The company still needed to go on. So he ended up increasing, and even when he wasn't in the company, he still went and he still tried to improve himself, think more designs, So by the time he came back, he had learned a lot that by the time he was coming back, the impact he had was worth him living for that season. So for me, purpose is basically that angle of having the gift God has given you and you sharing it for impact purpose. And most of the time, it's never for you. Is to help other people. So that's what I learned. I don't think I've gotten to my purpose. And we realized that purpose is not a thing you get to. Purpose is a way of living. So you live in purpose every day. Because if my work is to impact people around me, like right now where I live, I keep on saying you leave a place better than you find it. Whether it's saying hi to someone or being kind or helping someone in need, that's who I am. I'm empathetic. I'm able to see certain things that people would not see. So I'll come and ask you, hi, how are you doing? Are you okay? If you're not and I can help, that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, so you discover that the line, if someone was a problem solver, even when they were a child, one of the things you will discover is that this person used to like, oh my God, solving problems. So they would remove the keys of the car and put them back together. So you see that they used to do these things even when they were young. So purpose starts showing its signs from when guys were young. And purpose is not a job. Purpose is not a position. Purpose is the person that you become and the impact you're supposed to give to society. And the other thing that we learned is actually, it's interesting. Movies people watch and books people read are so aligned to what they care about society. So let me give an example of me. So some of the movies I found I really enjoy watching, and some of the books mostly are human behavior, but things that are unconventional, but they're working. So Scandal was one of my favorite series. Most people who cared about Scandal, what else was interesting?
Mine was Prison Break.
Yes.
Break and the Shawshank Redemption.
Yes, I remember. It's interesting. We attract in a way, what we are aligned to. Because it's interesting, none of the 35 people were the same, but some had different similar characteristics. And we could group them because we could say, these are the people who are very quiet, but they're problem solvers, they're very critical. But none of them was the same. And that just made us realize, you know what? It's interesting that each and every 35 of them, no one had the same dream. We're like puzzles. You're the only one designed to fit into that puzzle, into that space God has given you. No one else can come and sit there. Even if you're 35 people doing M-Pesa and you are all called to do M-Pesa, you'd all do it differently. Your strategies would be different. Your ways of thinking would be different. We are all very uniquely created for a specific purpose. We might have the same thing we want to do, but we'll all do it different. So there's space for everyone. If God called 35 of us to do M-Pesa, imagine there is space for everyone and there's someone for everyone. So it would still be okay. Yeah. So that was very interesting.
So that's it for the Creative Bulb podcast. If you want to know more about the Purpose Project, I'm going to put a link on how you can be able to contact Joy Njeri. Thank you so much for listening. You have been amazing. You stayed to the end. I hope you're able to learn what you're able to learn. So don't forget to follow us on Instagram at the Creative Bulb Podcast. We also have an email address. You can send your comments and suggestions to our email, creativebulbpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. Do have yourself an amazing week.